got my vlog up now on both my channels. I'm just doing vlogs, reviews and travels, and on buzzing vlogs as well. I'm up to about 119 subscribers on buzzing vlogs. I'm near like 11 on MIM. My Just Jane's vlogs, reviews and travels. I had a Five Guys burger and some chips and a Coke earlier on, but I don't really rate the Five Guys meal 2.5 out of 5 because the chips weren't that nice and the burger wasn't that nice. It came in a plain brown paper bag with the receipt attached and it cost me £18.59 for that, so I wasn't right impressed with it. But I didn't really want to leave the flat and go to the cafe that's nearby what we normally go to. I will be buying the Five Guys takeaway again. Pretty much now just chilling out. I don't think we're going to really film anything else too much tonight, but who knows? Because it's not even 11 PM yet. But I'll get off because I don't want to get anyone in the background talking. No, I shall see you either later or tomorrow. Bye.
Mostly comedy and horror. Jack.
Hello, my name is Jack Howard and I'm in a comedy duo with my good friend and occasional lover Dean Dobbs, and we make stupid videos together and try and make them look like movies to convince people that it's worth their time.
I'm Elle and I do videos about my life and my friends and my family.
That's nice. I'm Sammy Paul, writer, director, do a bit of music videos, a bit of short films, whatever I fancy. Cool, alright, sweet. So I'm very pro. I'm gonna read the questions off my phone, just because, you know, it's just a Sunday, you know. Okay, so let's chat. So, the first thing, yeah, this is a very bright light. Yeah, I can see it when I blink. First question I kind of want to ask is, do you guys find it harder to start a project or to finish a project? What daunts you more?
I will say the start daunts me a lot more than the finish. Like as soon as I've started, like it's almost like a snowball effect and I can't help but finish it. Like, but the beginning, and almost like that first hurdle of like, what even is this, is sometimes the hardest thing. Every now and again you'll get these lightning in a bottle moments where it's like, oh my god, this just works. And I had one of those coincidentally like the other day when Dean and I were writing a new sketch and it was like that first hurdle was tiny and it just worked. But a lot of the time that first page and that first process and that first draft is the hardest thing for me in the world and makes me sometimes hate doing this. I sometimes just go, I wish I didn't have to do this process because it sometimes just hurts me. Thank you. One person.
That was exactly the amount of sympathy that deserved.
I agree with Jack. I think starting can be a little bit more difficult for the reasons he stated. And I think when you're finishing a project, there's still going to be a number of problems, and you're going to face things, probably different problems to the ones that at the start of the project. But it's maybe a bit more clear how to solve those problems because you know what you've got in front of you. Like if you're in an edit, you know what you're working with. Maybe you need to do some pickups, okay, fair enough. Maybe you need to, rejig the whole scene and move some clips around and change maybe how the scene's feeling. Okay, you know how to solve that problem. But at the start, like Jack said, like sometimes it's just like, what is this gonna be? I don't know. So that can be daunting, yeah.
Do you have a different thing, or?
Well, I'm just curious because I think I find with filmmaking, when it's not going well, is it's sort of hellish to start and hellish to finish, and there's like a day where it goes right, and you're like, this is amazing, and then you're just, there's a great quote I really like, which is just, writing's easy, you just sit down at the typewriter and bleed, and it's just like, I do sometimes into the typewriter. Now,
not really Will.
And Will actually does do that for real, which is,
yeah, I'm lying with that.
Well, I guess it's just, I think those tend to be the biggest hurdles, right? Like it's like getting that ball rolling in a way can be a really tough thing. But then I think the flip side of that is sometimes you get people who like have a million ideas and kind of start writing something but don't quite finish that script. Like, have any of you had experience with that where like you've gotten a certain way down with something but it never quite came to fruition?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah? Yeah.
Tell me more.
Have you finished everything you've ever started?
Yeah, I think so.
No, alright. Please
just
tell
like
us your ways, and also the way that you're holding that microphone is ingenious.
It was a big night for Elle.
Anyway, no, I just think I'm just like too lazy to come up with another idea, so I just finish it. I figure out how to fix it and then just go through with it. And usually by the time I regret the idea, I spent too much money on it, so I just do it.
Yeah, I've got ideas like that I've told people about or had in my head for years now that I haven't done anything with or figured out how to make it work or like who the main character should be or what it should be about or what like it's really about. You know, because stories are about one thing, but really they're about like other things. And I've never been able to figure all those questions out, and that can get you really bogged down. So what I find is best to do is literally just put that idea in the drawer and do a different thing, because I think that like you can spend too much time like I don't know, like stressing over it to the point where it won't make sense to you anymore.
Yeah, I've loads of half-written shit. Not even half, like bits. But that's kind of good. Every writer has like, I mean, there's a difference between having ideas jotted down. Everyone does that. Like you're kind of just going about your day and someone says something and you see something and you hear a piece of music or whatever and you're like, oh, I'll jot something down and maybe that will come back into. And sometimes I incorporate them into stuff I'm working on in future. I'll be like, oh, this is similar to that thing I wrote a note about. But yeah, I've like a bunch of sort of 2 pages of scripts and the beginnings of stories and that kind of stuff where it's like, I have an idea for, sometimes they just start with a scene or they just start with a sentence even, and it's like, I'll just get that scene on paper and I can expand on, I know who the characters are now and I can expand on it at some point, but like then you just get swept up with other work and it's there.
Like, what's the deepest any of you have dug down before a project's either been cancelled or just like not been released? Like, because I know like Hazel and I once shot a film that got edited and just has never seen the world. You know what I mean? And we both just were like, nah.
It's awful.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Really bad.
That makes it sound. Yeah.
I don't know how we, because like we're discernible folk. We make okay shit, we have good opinions and stuff, and we made this thing and it just wasn't very good. And like it got shelved for quite a while, and then we went back and looked at it and I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
This can never be anything. But there was a seed in that, which the very original idea I had about a tiny piece of it, then kind of became the seed for a different script. But like nothing's happened with that yet either, but like yeah, sometimes you can salvage a small piece of something, even if it doesn't work out. And I say this a lot as well, even like when I was writing the book, I would sometimes get halfway through a chapter and be like, oh, this isn't what I wanted this chapter to be at all, this is just going in completely the wrong direction, but I've got, 2,000-3,000 words in, and then gone, oh, there's a little seed here, and I scrap the whole thing and just begin again with that little seed. So there's nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes you have to get quite far into something to actually understand what it is.
Yeah, I've been working on, there's a Jack and Dean series that we are writing at the moment. I have been writing for basically, I'm going to say it's like maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe even longer, and it's just the pilot, like just figuring out what the pilot is and who it's about and all that sort of stuff that I mentioned before. And it originally was just an idea we were doing independently, and then last year we were lucky enough to go, there's a film festival called Sundance, and we were able to go to one of their it was called the New Voices Lab, and they took us to California and they helped us sort of develop this script and this idea, and then since then it's been optioned, which basically means somebody's bought the idea for like a year by a production company called Birdman, and since then it's been changed even more, and it's just one of those things that's been developing for years, and I've got like 4 or 5 different versions of one episode just to try and figure out what the idea is, because I don't want to just go like, that's kind of alright, like I want to make sure it's the right thing. So that's how far I've got.
Right. Because I do think it's a dangerous habit, especially for people like starting up afresh, to kind of not finish stuff, you know what I mean? Like I think that's an early mistake a lot of people fall into, is like having all these good ideas, having these seeds of stuff that genuinely are like really exciting, really cool, but never quite seeing it through, like hating it by the time you finished it. I mean, and like I guess to that, I always try and say, like, you know, I think anyone who does a lot of writing realizes that like writing is really editing, you know what I mean? Like I think you hit your first draft of something and it's like, and then you like give it a week. I mean, that's my writing process.
That's what the film was.
right, just long fart. And then to me, it's always like, right, go back to it now, see it afresh, like get on it with new eyes. But I was going to ask, what do you think certain, I don't know, and I say this hopefully in a way that is useful, but what kind of common mistakes do you guys feel a lot of people make starting up, mistakes you've made that you've kind of had to learn from that would be useful, hopefully, as a learned moment? All right, none.
Okay, all right. I'm kind of just jumping off what you just said about like not finishing stuff. I think that a lot of people make the mistake where they go, oh, I've got this really good idea and I'm going to save it until I've made a few more things, and then I'll make that one, because that one is that's my masterpiece. And I think that's such a good idea that I'll make it when I've got more experience. And I think that's the worst thing you can do, because by the time you are 2 or 3, 4 years down the line, that idea might not mean anything to you anymore, and there's a thing you've never made, or you won't be able to think of another thing to do before that. So I think that whatever capabilities you've got to make anything, you should just make something, because it's always better to make something than to make nothing.
I agree. Yeah, I've got so many of those ideas. I've got like folders and folders of like finished scripts that I've just never even tried writing. And you go back to them now, and there's, like you were saying, you can take bits out of them, but mostly they're just completely redundant because you've just moved past them. So I just agree. Yeah, I agree.
But I also think there's a lesson in that though, that you spend time writing.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So it's not like you weren't doing anything, but it's like some people just go, I've got this concept that's so good I can't even fathom trying it yet. I have to do other things before I do that. Yeah. And I think that you obviously were writing scripts, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I think one mistake maybe a lot of people make that I definitely used to make was thinking that anything is ever truly finished. Like, you can finish a film, finish your project, and that's great, and then you move on to the next one, and you should keep going. But just because it's finished doesn't mean it was perfect. I think it's important to reflect on what you've made and really try to almost tear it apart a little bit yourself and think like, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, and really have that moment to sort of debrief yourself before you move on to the next project. And it doesn't have to be straight away, but as long as you revisit it at some point. Because I remember I used to make stuff, say, finished, move on, and never really look back at it. And then eventually, years later, when I would look back at it, just out of curiosity, like, how is this old thing I made in 2013? I'd look at it and think, oh, wow, that's pretty rough. Like, you know, at the time I thought, this is amazing. But it's important to look back at your old stuff and never, it's never truly finished.
Not in a George Lucas way, though.
No. That's too far. You don't need to go back and change stuff. Just learn from what you've done.
You hear that? Georgie's at the back.
Yeah, I think I saw him come in.
I'll take that advice on. Very cool. So have you ever had a bit of filmmaking advice that's really stuck with you, and is something that's just like either a sentence or like a notion or something to do that is like a real go-to to you that you kind of go back to a lot?
Yeah, so I was talking to my friend Steven Spielberg, which is true. He's not my friend. He doesn't remember
half true,
me.
yeah. Okay.
I was talking to him.
You were talking to
and he said,
Sorry, just drop that.
just if you could just get that, thanks. He said, okay, just do some shit over here, I could just hear him. He's never happy with anything he makes. Steven fucking Spielberg. And I was like,
Made Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year.
and he's still, but like he said in a way that like he's exactly what you were saying, so you're quite like my friend Steven.
I like to think so.
I've always thought that about you.
I don't want to say it.
We're all thinking it.
But yeah, he was like, the day I think something's perfect is the day I stop telling stories. Like, it's always just it's just striving to be better. It's just striving to be a better storyteller and a better filmmaker. And the day I make a film and go, well, that's the one, it's absolutely perfect, is I'll just stop, because I'm not trying to get better anymore. So yeah, I think that was, just really fucking heartening to hear as well. Sorry. You just stop cursing on panels.
It does make you wonder though, when you watch a film that you just think, oh, that was amazing. Like, for example, like Get Out. Like, do you think Jordan Peele like sat back and thought, all right, let's look at the problems? Because it's a film where I don't see any problems. So like, but he must have something.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't go how I wanted it to go.
Yeah, definitely, and it's interesting actually, I think, to have that disconnect as like an audience who watches the original Star Wars and goes, this is amazing, and George Lucas goes, no, I wish I could have done this with it, and that's one of the most famous cases of all time, that like, it didn't go how he wanted it to, and it accidentally became something iconic, and he went back and changed it, and everyone went, nope, this is worse than what you did before. So sometimes I think it's good to have limitations. This is sort of a different thing, it's not advice that I've had, but something I've learned, that when you intentionally sometimes put yourself in a box with your ideas, you can come out with something better because you're giving yourself limitations. Like now, if you look at movies that have no limitations because of CGI, you can see the most spectacular things and be less wowed by them than older movies that had limitations with what they could achieve.
It was the classic case with Jaws, coming back to my friend Stephen. They couldn't afford a decent shark. They just had this sort of half limp, half shark that looked really crap. So they had to just be really clever about how they shot it, the type of lighting, keeping it quite dark, not really showing it. And then of course the one
and using
John Williams score.
using other elements.
So they used the score to kind of to like create that tension because the shark itself looked kind of crap. So like,
imagine if that film was made today, though.
It'd just be a big CGI.
It'd just be a big CGI
It'd be
shot.
the Meg, wouldn't it?
It'd be the Meg.
Not to shit on the Meg, I'm sorry. Some people might like
Shit on the Meg.
The director with the Megs at the back.
next to George.
George, is he there? Hi.
Another piece of advice wasn't something specifically for me, but something I really connected with recently. There's a podcast called Script Notes that I try to listen to occasionally, which is all about screenwriting. And the guy on it wrote the new show Chernobyl, which is amazing, obviously. And he does a whole episode called How to Write a Movie, which people like me go, oh my god, it's the trick. Oh, here we go, we can find out how you do it. And I've watched and listened to and read so many things about like the formula of screenwriting and like the 3-act structure and like the arc of it and all that sort of stuff, how to do that. And his whole podcast was like, yeah, but why is it that structure? Why do we respond to that sort of stuff? And I really responded to that advice, and I think that if you are interested at all in writing and storytelling, I would really listen to that. Again, it's called Script Notes, and the episode is called How to Write a Movie. It's something that it almost opened my eyes to a different way of looking at writing that I feel like I'd hit a wall recently, and that really sort of like led me to a different conclusion about how I think about it. So I'd really recommend that.
A piece of advice I really like, very, very practical piece of advice, was I was once told that, again, I'm going to do a name drop as well, you've set the ball. I got to meet Mr. Ron Howard, obviously, with the new film stuff, and a really cool bit of advice he gave was often if he's thinking about a scene he wants to direct, he'll go to a movie he just adores, he goes to a movie he loves, and tries to find a similar scene, and watches it silently, watches it without any audio. And he said, what's interesting is you start to get a feel for what their shot list was that day. You start to get a feel for, okay, so they're going for the wide, and then, they hold off on the close until this line, right, what's that line? And kind of piecing that together. And I think it kind of, in a funny way, it kind of takes the magic away from it, but in a really useful way, because suddenly you're in a position where you're like, ooh, I can kind of dissect that a little bit. I can kind of steal that. So I always think that's a really good example, weird example. When we were doing Guiltless, the latest Doig music video, there's this bit where she's like falling in the darkness, and the very, very, very strong influence on that was the scene in Get Out where he falls into the sunken place, because it's one of the fucking coolest scenes in the world. And we really were just like, let's look at this really practically, and you realise like they actually have him sink down in his first location, and then they match cut that onto him falling, and it was just a very practical way of being like, that's helpful, cool, that's how we're going to do that, and it's just steal, but silently. Elle, I wanted to come to you on this one. Okay, so you used to do, I'm baiting you out here, a lot of like fan edits of stuff, didn't you, right?
Yeah, I did.
And that's how you started off on YouTube.
Yeah, it was.
And what's so funny to me is I think like the thing that makes your videos sing for me is very much the edit. Like, and I can tell that you've got like a background and an experience in editing. What is it for you that you look for in an edit? What is it for you that you kind of that you do so well to go, right, that's what's going to sing, that's what's going to work for me?
I mean, I feel like in my edits, like I heavily rely on the music, and I edit to the beat a lot, and I find that it helps with the flow, and it's like keeps it going, and I like love transitions and stuff, just so it feels like it's all like flowing together really well. And so that's like my one thing that I like spend a lot of time on, because I feel like subconsciously you're like, oh, this is really like there's a rhythm to it, and I like that rhythm.
And do you like, when you shoot stuff, do you shoot with the edit in mind? Or?
I have the music already down. Yeah, the music's done first, and then I put on top. Like I start filming.
You storyboard.
Like not well.
No, but
Do you know what I mean? Like
even crudely, do you know roughly like?
yes, I know in my head, and I like have it like kind of like blocked and marked in like my edit. Yeah.
Do you know how you're going to cut it even when you're filming it?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's. I mean, that's, you can
That's
tell.
why that's why I find it very hard to like. I use copyrighted music because I tried to do the other way where I had someone like kind of like score it, I guess, and it didn't work because I heavily rely on the music and all that to start the project. I usually have a song. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make a whole video revolving that this song was in it. And so.
I'm sort of similar, but
Because then suddenly everything's like, this is amazing. I'm creating all these
I
emotions.
find that makes me write the most schmaltzy
Well,
crap.
this is what I was going to say. This is a two-step bit of advice, okay? Because that's great for getting the juices flowing and like, I'm a fucking genius, and you write it all out. And of course, it's just the music that's doing it. And then like, give it a week. Come back, sit in fucking silence, and let the like sound of the words stand by themselves. And so often it's like, no.
But it's good to get words on page, because when you're staring at a
Right.
blank page, that's a
Right.
lot harder than when you're staring at a page with actual words on. Even if they're not the best words, you can make them better words.
No, absolutely.
I think another bit, sorry, just to go back to advice, just because PG's just made me think of it, is that when you're writing something, don't tell yourself that you have to write it in order, which is something I still struggle with. That like, when you're writing something, and at the moment I'm writing something that has to be 30 pages, so if you sat me down with a sketch idea and said it has to be 5 pages, I'll do it in half an hour. Like, it's like I've been doing it for so long now that I know how that works. But now, moving on to 30 pages, I'm like, okay, I want a scene like this, but I need to do this scene first. But I'm like, nope, now I can open up a new document and just write that scene on its own, and then I've written something rather than just keeping it in my head and being like, I really want to write that scene, how do I get to it? Just write it. You don't need to do it in order. Like, don't trick yourself into thinking that's what you need to do. And that's for me as well, I'm telling myself that.
I was going to ask, I mean, obviously it's going to vary from project to project, but generally speaking, when you first start putting words on the page, like at the point at which literal letters are appearing on the screen, how much do you tend to have it in your head already? Do you know, like, do you prefer just jumping in and going with it, or do you prefer sort of knowing exactly what structure you're after, what the punchline is, what the ending is, you know, like, what stage are you at in your head generally when you start writing? Let's start with Will.
I never have an ending.
Okay.
I always start with like the concept and then build as I go through the script. So I literally never know where it's going to go, and then yeah, it just comes out.
You've never started anything knowing the ending?
Maybe a couple, but mostly it's just kind of
I think you feel that in your writing, right? Because it's that chaotic level of just like. I think you just get bored and you're like, let's make it weirder.
That's too normal.
Taika Waititi said that like when he gets to a point where he's like, this scene is boring.
Sorry, Hazel, you just dropped another.
I didn't say I spoke to Taika. I just said he said that. I tried that time to not. Yeah, he was like, when you get to a bit and you're like, I'm bored of this scene now, you just change the scene. Because I was trying to get advice out. I was like, how do you write scripts? They're so great. And he was like, when I get bored, I'll just change the scene. And I was like, okay, I'll try that, I guess. But I can't imagine not knowing where you're going.
Does it ever scare you to sort of sit down and not know how it's going to end?
Well, no, I think that's why I've got so many unfinished scripts. Yeah.
How about you?
I can actually be very similar, to be honest. Not for everything, but for some things, I'll have a nugget of an idea, and I'll be like, well, I'll think of how it will end later. And so I just start kind of like snowballing it into something. And yeah, sometimes it's important to know what the ending is if it's a specific kind of story you're trying to tell. But yeah, sometimes I can relate.
Yeah, I think as well knowing, like, I've had a couple projects now where I've had to get from A to B. And so what I've done is I've made the beginning and the end and then filled it in. Like when we shot Prank Me, it's about a YouTube prankster kind of going down a dark route. So you have to start with this guy who's reasonably likable and end up with a complete psychopath. And it really helped actually that we shot the last episode first. So I knew where he was going. I knew what level of psychopathy we had to get to. So then it was a case of, okay, well in episode 5 he needs to be at here on the scale, and I would constantly talk to Corey, who played the character, about like, today we're shooting this thing and this falls in episode 7 and that means you need to be here on the scale, and we would constantly talk about where he was at, which was really helpful. And then similarly, like doing the book, I've written a book, I'm not sure if I mentioned, I've written a book, you can pre-order it now, outofloveonband.com. But that's in reverse completely, so it begins with a couple breaking up and ends with them meeting and getting together. So I had to do the first chapter, which is technically the last chapter, and the last chapter, which is technically the first chapter, and then kind of then tell the story in between, because otherwise I didn't know like to what level do they hate each other and what level are they in love before you kind of do all the other, because you don't want to get to almost to the last chapter and they're wildly in love already and you're like, oh, they've got to be more in love by the last one. So yeah, so sometimes it can really help if you do have an ending in mind. If it has to be that, then it's good to have something in mind where you have A to B and you know how to get there.
It's very smart, actually. Sorry, Jack, I'll let you in a second. It's a very smart way to do it, because sometimes you'll be watching something and you'll think, like, there will be like a big jump in, like, there'll be one scene where characters are one way, and the next scene they're actually quite different, and you're like, oh, that was quite a jump, and we haven't really had enough time to...
Game of Thrones.
What? No, who said that?
I call it killing younglings.
Yeah.
I'll explain.
Kill your wait.
No,
Your darlings is the
killing younglings. No, it's very different.
Is that a Star Wars?
It is a Star Wars thing. In the prequels, which we
yeah.
usually don't mention, Anakin goes from being an alright, quite troubled guy to just killing a bunch of baby Jedi. And it's, look, we all know the prequels are bad, but like, I always use killing younglings as a reference.
He's
it's
right
like,
there, Hazel.
I'm sorry, they were crap. But yeah, that's the thing I always use when I'm in a script and I go from this state to this state and then go, wait, hold on, has my character just killed some younglings there? Like, have I gone way too far, too fast? And do I need, sometimes you just need a little bit of sort of tissue in the middle, sort of to just bridge the gap.
That'd be a great screenwriting term. Don't kill the younglings.
Don't kill the younglings. You can kill the
We should start
younglings,
with
you've
the
just got to
younglings.
build to it.
Yeah, you need to know why you're killing the younglings.
Yeah. It's kind of the opposite to Will, actually. And I guess PJ as well, is that like I find that having an ending in mind, for me personally when I'm writing it, sort of ties the whole thing together. Because when I'm writing, I then know I almost picture it as a funnel constantly, that like we're heading towards a singular idea. So like, just as an example, when we made The Goblin, which is one of our most ridiculous sketches, where Dean plays a goblin, I was like, this needs to be grounded in some sort of reality. And so actually, it wasn't made for about 4 or 5 months, maybe longer, since we came up with the idea. Because when we were filming, we made another sketch a couple of years ago where Dean's breaking up with his computer, who's now self-aware. And on the lunch break for that sketch, Dean just started doing that little lips voice, started just doing it. And I just started improvising with him. And then over time, we started like coming up with the idea about, okay, so it's Jack's in a new house and he brings his landlord over to be like complaining that there's a goblin in the house now, and they were like, no, that doesn't quite work, because where's it going constantly, what's he trying to do, like otherwise it's just a sketch of somebody complaining about having an infestation. So then it was like, oh no, Jack should be an estate agent trying to sell the house, so constantly he's got a goal, he's trying to just convince them that this is a good thing, you should try and keep this here. And it's like just developing that idea from something that was just a silly idea of a silly character into, okay, what's it about though? And then by the end, it was like, okay, we can then reverse it and Dean can be the estate agent as a goblin. And like, it was just like a perfect punchline. So it was just over that time I needed to, before I ever put words on a page, I needed to figure out what it was really about before it was just like Dean doing a voice for a bit, because I would have been bored by that.
Well, because endings are hard. Like, endings, I think, are the hardest thing. And, like, I almost, for me, like, I feel like it's cheating, but it's not at all. Like, I try to do the ending first. Like, if anything, I'm like, what could the end scene be? What situation could we end up in? What's going to take us there? You know what I mean? And it's like, I find it so, because I think the way we experience a film is obviously chronologically, and I find, like, whilst, you know, clearly that's some people's kind of preference to kind of write that way, I always find it so hard, because it's, you know, like, in an ideal world, there's a great quote, like, I think it's a David Mamet quote, which is, endings should be surprising but inevitable, which I really like. And I think that's, for me, that's so hard to construct if I don't know where that's going. But I guess that's testament to just like...
Elle,
Sorry, but I want to hear from Elle as well.
yeah, I was just going to say, Elle, like,
I find endings easy, but I was going to say, do you, because your videos always tend to lead to a moment.
Yeah.
Do you know what that moment's going to be?
Yeah, always. I feel like a majority of my things I always have the ending in mind because I like a good ending. And so I'm like, yeah, and strong. Yeah, like a good punch. The intro is always the last thing I do. Every single time. I always film and then figure out why did I lead up to this moment kind of thing. And figure it out.
Because I was going to say, a lot of your kind of, like, the structure of the way you make stuff is often like, it's like a kind of setup and payoff. It's like, my brother did this, therefore I want revenge, here's what happened, sort of thing. And it's so interesting to me that, like, you know, so you do start by doing the thing and then build it retroactively, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I find it easier to do.
Right.
Because I know, like, usually with my stuff it's a little easier. I'm like, I'm doing something, so do the thing. That's the ending.
Right. Well, have you ever had one of those kind of payoffs, one of those things where it's like, this is the answer, you know, this is how it went, that just wasn't good or wasn't usable, or have they all gone okay so far?
There was one where I had to restructure the video a little bit. It's a hit or miss with this video. I legally married my sister's boyfriend for a video. And so I was banking on everyone laughing in my video, like the family being, oh, that's so funny. And the video ended up, while filming, you know, there was a lot of crying, it was just not good. So then there was a point where for a week I was not allowed to post the video. And so I was like, shit. I got married for no reason, and then I was like, okay. Basically the problem was we didn't want the audience, because it's a YouTube audience, to hate Mitch, who's just my sister's boyfriend, because it's not, no one's really genuinely mad. They just think it's stupid. But I could see how people would be like, that's cheating, this, et cetera, and so I had to like rearrange it and make it look like we knew we were stupid, so that we like were self-aware about it. So like, originally it was more like, this is revenge, like screw you, but now it's more like, oh no, we're stupid, don't do this. And now we're like kind of make it humorous almost. So like that, there was a restructure in the edit in midway.
Well, I think you know, I'm a big, well, not just me. I very much subscribe to the notion that you know, there's the old adage of like a film is made 3 times. It's written, it's directed, and it's edited. And in a way, sort of, it needs to adjust every single time. I think if you get on set and your script and you're trying to do too closely to what exactly is written in the script, you're missing the point. But then equally, and this seems reflected in what you're saying, is I think when you get to the edit, you kind of almost have to start afresh. Like you sort of have to be like, right, doesn't matter what we were attached to on set, doesn't matter what we were kind of planning, if it means cutting some stuff out, if it means spending longer on stuff. I always think the big mistake, music videos are a good example of this, right? Because when you're doing a music video, you can't have a shot last 10 seconds longer than you'd like it to because the performance gets interesting 10 seconds later. You have to stick to it. So, I mean, I feel like so often, we found this a lot with Monster, like there was stuff that we'd shot which we were just like, I think it needs to go, like I think we need to cut it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of really like cool, fun things that we got, and then when it came to the song, it's weird. When you do an animatic, which I did do and it was horrible, when you do an animatic, when you actually see that on camera, you need longer. You think a shot, okay, this is 2 seconds, probably enough, and then you actually see the acting, the proper acting. You've got your actors in front of the camera. You just need a little bit longer than you feel you need, and so yeah, it was definitely not putting in too much more than we.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy. I directed a music video for All of Gartland called Flatline, and I didn't really enjoy doing the animatic stuff either. But it was so valuable to me because I didn't really do it the way you did it, which was like you drew a lot of things that you wanted to see in it, which is definitely more of your sort of style. Whereas what I did is I just like took scenes from other movies and almost created like a tone piece of like, this is the sort of journey I'm taking the audience on, and it really helped me figure out what the journey was, rather than actually specific shots. And it made no sense to Sammy. So Sammy was a producer on this, and he watched it and went, I don't know what you're making.
There was a bit where Jack didn't know how to draw perspective and couldn't draw a cue. Yeah. So he got a load of plush toys, lined them up, and just took photos. And so I was watching this animatic, and at one point I'm watching Back to the Future, and then suddenly there's like a toy lobster. It's just like stood in the queue, and I'm like, what are we making?
Art. We're making art.
My next music video is just going to be an animatic.
Yeah, I think.
Honestly, human, yeah, it was fine, but the animatic.
Right.
That was great.
was a trip.
That should have just been the video.
We always like to joke, like, what if you accidentally upload the animatic instead of the final piece?
It's here.
But the key thing is to remember that an animatic is really for yourself and like, you know, closely to the people you're working with. It's not, you don't show it to everyone on set. This is what we're making, because like when we made Monster and like, you know, it was very bad because I just needed it for me and Sammy and maybe Kira, you know, the DOP. But I did specifically say, right, this is really awful. I've drawn Pikachu in there and Jar Jar Binks, so please don't show this to Dodie. And of course, Sammy immediately showed it to Dodie. I was like, for fuck's sake, Sammy! She loved it.
I think you literally wrote the words in the automatic. Misa give you drinks.
Again, it was for me and me only. It's for my eyes only, yeah. Yep.
I think George appreciated that one.
Cheers, George. I think that's an interesting point, actually, the animatic thing, because I think it ties into another bit of stuff, which is how much homework do you try to do before you get on set? How much do you try and meticulously plan things out versus trying to, you know, I'm not trying to put a negative spin on it, you know, like staying open and staying fresh to sort of new ideas once you're on set?
I love both of those things, and I've grown to love both of those things. Like, the most recent thing we made on Jack and Dean was this detective sketch that was about somebody eating the last slice of pizza, so it was ridiculous. But I wanted it to feel like a proper detective. So I watched Seven and I looked at True Detective and I looked at all these other things in that genre to be like, okay, how do I want this to look? How do I want this to feel? How should me and Dean be acting with each other? Like the tone, the clothes, like all that sort of stuff, we like looked at that sort of thing together. And then on set, when it came to the script, like there's an entire bit between me and Dean which is kind of similar in the script, but like Dean on the day just had a funnier idea, and it just completely changed that scene, you know, around. And also, like in the script originally, there's a ridiculous running gag where somebody's, you know, it's from detective shows where somebody goes, "You're going to want to see this," and then it cuts to them seeing something horrific. But we just kept doing it, and then eventually the guy who said you're going to want to see this, it cuts to him just showing them him playing the flute, and originally that was him like doing like that thumb trick, but then Mike Truman, who played the role, was like, I can play a tin whistle, and I was like, that's so much funnier. So that's how those sort of very open to like things being a bit.
This Mike Truman. What a tin whistle. Oh, what about you, Peter?
Well, yeah, me and Will kind of winced at the same time, so I'm curious to see what Will says. So I'm a bit guilty of sometimes doing less preparation than I should. Not always, but sometimes I'll turn up on set and have not really prepared much, other than obviously knowing this, you know, I know the property and I know what we're doing, but like sometimes I feel so confident in like my actors, like for example, like when we've done stuff in the past with Chris Kendall, who's brilliant, like that I trust him and he knows what he's doing, so a lot of the time I'll sort of figure it out on the day with him, and sometimes you can get some very genuine organic things that way, but yeah, I know sometimes you need to prepare, and I you know, sometimes I kick myself for not, and yeah, I'm curious, Will, tell me more about you.
Do you kick the PJ?
What? Get out! Yeah, go on.
I'm surprised you're here. I do no preparation. I used to storyboard stuff, but the puppets don't really need much direction. So it's the last thing I shot, I literally hadn't seen the location, and just someone said, "Oh, there's this awesome wood," and I just turned up on the day and kind of improvised. So since I do everything myself, it's. I mean, obviously it's useful to storyboard, but
you can trust yourself with that.
That's the thing.
Different when you're working with other people and actors in a crew. Like I shot a music video. I shot a music video for Anaconda like last year, which isn't coming out I think till this September for various reasons. But it's all one take. So obviously that needed to be planned within an inch of its life. Like it's a music video, so it has to hit every beat properly. You're just following one character for like, I don't know, 2 minutes. So you have to land on certain points at certain points, and you don't really have any choice about it. So
and there was an option for you to split it into 2 takes, but
there was an option.
Refused. You were like, this is 1 take.
So if you're doing 1 take, you're doing 1 take. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone was like, well, we'll give you. And I've done 1 take before, and in that time as well, there's always it's nice to give yourself a cutting point. It's nice for the DOP to kind of go, look, I'm giving you this moment where something crosses frame, and if we because we've only got 1 day to shoot it, if we get to the end of the day and we've not got it and we have 2 half takes, it's an option, and it is good to have that. I think partly just to put your mind at rest so that you can get it done, and you usually do. But yeah, on that day it was like we ended up with a video that I preferred the beginning of 1 take and the end of another, but there's no point telling the world it's one take if it's not one take. So I'd rather just kind of go with the full one. But yeah, stuff like that, you have to be so meticulous about it. And particularly if you've got a bigger, like if you're working with like 70 people on set for the day, you've got to go in knowing what you're doing. But
Yeah, you can't be the one person who's holding everybody up.
Yeah.
Like, especially because
11 years now, since I was a tiny little 16-year-old, and I make kind of like comedy videos and other stuff. I don't do it full time. I have a full-time job, and did from... When do you normally get a job? I shouldn't ask these people, they've got no idea.
Hi, my name's Joel. I'm one half of the duo Joel and Leah, who sat over there. We've been making YouTube videos for about 6-7 years, and it's been full-time for about a year. We've just branched out on our own as well.
Hello, my name is Melanie Murphy, and I started a YouTube channel when I was in my final year of university as a kind of a hobby and just a way to get better at public speaking, because I would stand up, I was doing teaching, and I would stand up and get a massive rash on my chest, and I realised that was not a good thing if you want to be a teacher. And it became a full-time job for me really quickly. It was in 2013, so about 6 years ago, and it's been my full-time job ever since. I wouldn't just say YouTube though, like I do a lot of different things on the side, like I write and I have various other little businesses and whatnot, but yeah, it's only all there because of my channel.
I'm Elle, and I have been doing YouTube for full-time for like almost 2 years, something like that. And yes. That's it.
You didn't say your catchphrase.
Oh, hi. I'm Elle Mills, and...
I'm Daniel J Layton. I have been in the YouTube scene-ish since I was 2010, when I was a young boy of 12. Thank you, Jazza. Yeah, I have been doing this in theory, this is my full-time job. In practice, I'd have been fired years ago. I've been doing it full-time for about 2.5 years now, I think. And that's me. What's your name and where do you come from?
My name's Rosiana, and I come from London. And I do YouTube, but kind of irregularly. I'm a film producer and do a ton of other random things as well. So that's my strong intro. But I want to begin by asking if any of you guys have ever been burnt out. And if so, could you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Shall we do a show of hands who of us hasn't felt burned out? Well, that's good, isn't it?
Shall we turn to the audience? Has anyone in the audience ever felt burnt out? Has anyone not felt burnt out? Oh, well done, Jazza. Good job.
How have you not felt burnt out? Jesus.
And these are some workshops.
What you're having.
So I wanted to ask initially, have you found it easy to recognise when you are burnt out or when you're about to be burnt out? Like, how does it manifest? What's happening to you?
I think like the first time I felt burnt out was probably about 3 years ago, and to be honest, like I didn't even want to really talk to anyone about it because I felt like it sounded like I was complaining, because a lot of my friends and stuff, you know, they're always like, oh, you should be so grateful for your work, and I am, and so I always kind of felt a pressure to like not really kind of complain about, oh, you know, YouTube is so, because I see people in really difficult jobs like nursing and all these things, and you don't want to be there like, I can pick my own hours and this and that, and yet complain about it. But the way YouTube has kind of been is that if you're not kind of really on the ball, it's like a hamster wheel, and it for a long time it was rewarding. The more regularly you posted, the better you would do, and then that would translate into other, you know, money and opportunities and stuff. So you felt like if you took a break for mental health or anything like that, that you would financially suffer. And you know, we're all trying to get on the property ladder and things like that at this age. And I just found myself like barely sleeping, and it just got to a point where I was a nightmare to be around because I just couldn't juggle everything. It's too many balls in the air.
I think the thing I've noticed when I can feel it coming on is that it can switch on a dime. Like it can be, is that a phrase? Switch on a dime, flip on a dime, I don't know. Basically what I'm saying is I can be in a mode of like feeling really energized and creative and on top of things, and then I can wake up and just be like, oh, uh-oh, I'm out for a while, and it's kind of hard to tell how long it's going to be. So I think being aware that that can happen, it makes you sort of try and come up with strategies for when that is a thing, rather than, you know, preparing yourself for it. It's being prepared that it could happen at any moment, at least in my experience.
I actually find it really hard to recognise when it's happening, because I think a lot of the time we glamorise the idea of being really busy, and I think that's especially a millennial thing. And I mean, Rosiana sent me many articles about why this is. She loves to send people articles, so I feel like it's the idea that if you're busy and you're productive, then you're like a worthwhile human being. So I think even people who aren't putting things out, like YouTube videos and things that people see all the time, are experiencing this constant pressure to be productive and like be doing something, which is actually just a capitalist nightmare, isn't it? Because it's like you should be like constantly working, or you are not worthwhile as a human being, which is obviously not true. So I feel like a lot of the time we're all kind of approaching burnout and not realizing it, because we're putting all this pressure on ourselves. Because I mean, I made YouTube videos for a long time, but I don't have an audience that's like, oh my god, I must have the next video, so I haven't experienced that kind of burnout. All the pressure that I feel, I put on myself to be like the most productive version of myself I can be. And that, I mean, I feel like I still do that, and I haven't actually found many coping mechanisms for getting around that, because I want to feel productive and good all the time. So that's depressing, isn't it?
Everybody take a shot.
Joel, did you have?
Yeah, well, I've only experienced it once, so I feel like I don't know. That was a surprise, so I'm not as experienced. I don't think I've been doing it maybe as long as you guys full time. But we recently got back from a trip to LA where we've been filming back-to-back loads of videos, and we've been doing Instagram posts every day, which I never do, and I was like, pretty sure when I get back I'm gonna just be a recluse again, I'm not gonna wanna do anything. So I sensed it in that moment, I think, and I deleted the app. And then a few days later, management were like, oh, can you post this on Instagram for a brand deal? So I was like, oh, I need to. So I downloaded it briefly, but I think that's the hard thing. You don't know when to switch off. And if you do come off, then you're going to need to go back on eventually, and when's the right time to do that. So yeah, I'm not the biggest expert in it, but because I'm fairly new.
No, it is another part of it for me is that when you're working for yourself, you don't, like, you kind of have to show up. So if you commit to do something, like I agreed to do Buffer Festival again this year, so I was like, I'll make a documentary, that'll be grand, that won't be as hard as making a short film. And no, like it's really complicated, and I'm trying to learn all these new things, and then I have another book deadline, and I also have to try and post to my channel every week, and then just trying to fit in a social life around that and stuff like that. You just get to a point where, like, you know, I start noticing it when my friends are kind of like, oh, you haven't opened my message for 3 days and things like that, and it's just because I genuinely have no energy to even have a more conversations than what's going on, and it just kind of slowly. I always slowly notice it, and then it gets to a point, yeah, where I kind of just can't do anything. That sucks, because I'm the one then that has to take the hit rather than other people.
Something interesting you just said there about, like, you know, you have to show up for yourself kind of thing, is like, when you are self-employed, when you are your own boss, the only person really you let down is yourself, and I'm sort of right with that. So, like, that's a bad place to be. And there's a moment where you're just like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm the one getting it wrong, so that's fine. Then you just hide in bed, and that's quite a toxic headspace to be in. And that's where my main struggle comes, I think.
I think it's really interesting that you said, Melanie, earlier about jobs and feeling like you can't complain about it because your friends or other people you know in the world are doing these jobs that feel very difficult. What I've seen again and again with friends and also with myself is that when the people around me who do have hard jobs say, I'm concerned, please slow down, in my head I dismiss it. It's not really coming from them, it's always coming from me. Like, have you guys found that as well?
Yeah, I think, so there's that famous sort of line, which is that, like, you know, oh, my job is a hobby. You know this, but the panels we've been on, I'm bad at the cliches. I don't know quite what the wording is.
Yeah,
something about, like,
he gave a quote that was wrong.
when your job is your
you never
hobby,
work
you
a
never
day.
Exactly, something like that. And saying it in an Irish
it's
mammy voice
bullshit.
like that was wonderful. Yeah, and yet it is bullshit, isn't it? It's like, it's still work, it's still difficult. Obviously, it's an enjoyable job and it's an immense privilege, but I think we all know that when we're talking like this, we are all aware of what a privilege
It's still
is to
time
have
and
this job.
energy. It's like, you know, it's fun, but then if you're spending hours and hours and hours and hours on an edit, and then you're trying to also do loads of other things, even on your breaks, you're doing emails and stuff. Because I know some YouTubers have a whole team and stuff, but I still feel like you still take on so much pressure on your own shoulders with it. And and I would love if we got to a place where it's kind of viewed and as a real job, and kind of, but I just don't think it's by most people it's kind of looked upon like that. But
I think what you're saying about your like close friends will see you and know that it's not. I think from a distance, perhaps like family friends on Facebook will be like, oh, you were at another film premiere, or oh, you did this, and it's quite a glamorous life. But your close friends see the level of work that goes in and see you in your sort of goblin days. And yes, you're right, they are the ones more that are like, are you okay? Whereas you're not allowing yourself that for, I guess, maybe shame or whatever reason, I don't know.
I had a question that I was reading a lot about burnout in corporate culture, which seems to be where all the research is, rather than...
Again, on brand.
Thanks. Rather than about kind of online culture. And they kept linking burnout with a lack of clarity about what a person's job role should involve. And do you think that this applies to when you're working for yourself or part-time working for yourself? And do you guys think that you have a good understanding of your own role?
Obviously, I think like part of the role for a lot of people is sharing your personal life, and that is very, very difficult with blurring the boundaries. And I think like I think I've benefited a lot from having a full-time job and having those boundaries within my working life. Because I mean, I say that, but at the same time, I still go home from work, and then if I don't do more work when I've come home from work, I hate myself. So it's not quite the like healthy attitude that I'm pretending I have. But yeah, I think like the stuff that I do is like rarely that personal. It doesn't involve my kind of day-to-day. But I imagine people who are like vlogging their day-to-day lives, like how is their... I mean, do any of you guys do this?
I do a monthly vlog, but it's a lot easier in that to kind of really pick and choose what you share. It's 30 minutes over an entire month, and anyone I know who's done monthly vlogs has kind of experienced the same thing. Like you usually will look at your month and what was like the key thing, and try and like almost form narrative around it. But it is a really weird one because you know, I think most YouTubers are very creative people, but then when your real life gets intertwined with that, you come to a point where you're like, I wish I was spending all my time doing creative stuff where I'm not involved, but that's how we built an audience. So then if you let that go, will people care about the other creative stuff? So yeah, I find myself in that weird place I'm still trying to navigate that line. And I'm finding myself stepping away from most of my time being spent on personal content and spending much more time on other things. But yeah, it's less income.
On lack of clarity in terms of the roles and stuff, because I do everything myself. I am my own manager, I am my own lawyer, I am my own writer, I am my own, which is why I'm in several legal battles at the moment. I am my own writer, my own editor, my own performer, my own hype man. Like, it's all me. And without wanting to sound ungrateful, I never wanted to be a YouTuber. I want to be a performer, I want to be an actor, I want to be all of these musicians, singer, performer, dancer, other performing, I've run out of jokes. It's a long weekend. A comedian, yes, thank you very much. So when you're trying to do this, to be a stepping stone, to be something else, and knowing that is your end goal and that's where you want to be, and you feel like that where Lex said, you know, she comes home and she's like punching herself because she hasn't done enough work. Mine is like, well, I didn't do any work towards that. I'm spending all of this time coming up with the next, you know, vlog just to tide me over this week, and it's like, where have I found the time to do that? And I think that doing, and I don't love editing. I don't love the process of it. I love the upload button. The upload button's great, and sharing it and talking to people and all of that stuff. That's so much fun, but the actual process of making it can be quite stressful, and that's where I feel the most, like, I just want to throw everything in the air and run away to the Isle of Wight and hide in that bit of the island where there's no train. Do you know what I mean? There's only on one side, and then...
Never been.
Oh, I don't. But yeah, that's when I feel the most like I just want to quit everything and hide in a library, because like it's just so much, and not having that clear purpose of why. Well, I have a clear purpose. That's what I want to do. Why am I doing all of this stuff? And even though it is linked, and even though it is an entertaining and fun thing to do, and it will hopefully ultimately help me to get to where I want to be, it's just a headache. It's just so much. It's just lots. It's lots.
How about you and Elle and Joel? Do you have like a sense of what your role is, kind of understanding it? Or do you have like an ideal of what you would want your role to be? Like how involved in these things? In life, yeah. Like, in your career. Like,
my career?
Yeah, like What's like, is the ideal you doing absolutely everything, or is it?
I mean, ideally, just for my mental health, I wouldn't want me doing everything, but creatively, I cannot let go of that, which is a big problem. But with other stuff, like I'm doing baby steps, so like I just got an assistant, so like doing like small little tasks like that help. And then like when it comes to the business side, I don't take care of that, so like that's another load like off my chest, wherever, shoulders, yes.
My face.
Yeah, my face, everywhere. But yeah, no, I don't know, I guess. I'm still figuring that out, but obviously like it's a little tough because I find creatively I'm very protective over that, and that's obviously a big stress. Like making videos is a huge stress for me, and it would be easier for me to like let go and have someone help me out. But obviously I'm working towards doing that. So.
No, I was just gonna say, I always wonder if, like 100 years ago, people who were really creative, like if they probably experienced burnout as well. It might be something that's kind of inherently linked to being creative, because I think when your brain is wired that way and you constantly have all of these ideas for these different things, you're kind of, even if we didn't have YouTube, probably be just there with like notebook after notebook and doing it somehow. And yeah, I don't know of many people who've managed to figure out how to just like what you said, you know, how many coping mechanisms for it. It's that kind of thing. Like mine is literally like turn off my phone and stuff. It doesn't stop your brain going. Like it doesn't stop the overactiveness of your imagination.
Yeah, like get some sleep, but you're lying there at 3 in the morning like, well, I've got so many things to do, I might as well do them now.
What's that like? I think that's interesting about thinking about 100 years ago, because I see burnout in my friends who are doctors, and I see burnout in people who work in other fields as well. But I think the common thing that unites them is people not feeling like they have other people to talk to about it. And the moment people start thinking that they can't confess that they're, I don't know, running out of energy, seems to be where they just shut down. And that's something I've seen kind of in common. I think on the creative side of it, it feels like such a personal failure sometimes. Like, I cannot give what you need from me to myself. And that's maybe where it does get all a bit dark, to say. Anyway.
I'm imagining, you're talking about 100 years ago and people getting burnt out, and I'm imagining like that, what was it, that Mary Shelley went to that retreat and they actually ended up writing Frankenstein. Like, they all wrote something together, and I'm imagining that, but for vloggers, and someone comes out with like the most iconic vlog of all time, based on like Ruckus Retreat. I'm into it.
Speaking of boundaries, Lex mentioned boundaries and setting boundaries between professional and private time, and sometimes finding that difficult. In one of the many articles that I've shared, there's this great piece by Anne Helen Peterson that she wrote for BuzzFeed that you might have seen, I think it was around January. And she says, why can't I get this mundane stuff done? Because I'm burned out. Why am I burned out? Because I've internalized the idea that I should be working all the time. Would you agree with that, the idea that you should be working all the time, or the feeling rather? And have you set boundaries for yourself around your time specifically, and created a time when you shouldn't be working?
So I have a concept. I call it normal Sundays. And the idea is that on a Sunday, I do nothing but do normal human activities, like watch the Strictly Come Dancing results show, and just cook some food, and maybe catch up on the football, which sounded like someone who's never watched football in their life. I watch football. And I like the idea of that very much. Taking a bath, I don't know, because if you know you're always at an event on one night and you're being dragged. It's not a normal activity to be pushed in front of a load of flashing bulbs at an event. And, like, can we take a picture of you? And then you see this.
If you just go down the line and introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about your channel.
My name is Scola Dondo, and I make health and fitness videos, and mostly about like my journey with health and fitness and the health condition I have. So yeah.
Hi, my name's Doig-Thorne. I mainly do comedy content, so comedy sketches and also a lot of film stuff.
YouTube isn't actually my main platform, it's mainly Facebook and Instagram, but this year I've been like really focusing on YouTube because it's pretty awesome.
Hi guys, I'm Cherry Wallis. I focus mostly on the Wizarding world, so Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. If you can tell from what I'm wearing, wand. But yeah.
Hi, my name is Leadley. I'm a singer-songwriter. New track Chic came out Friday. Please stream it, thank you. And yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Taz. My channel's ClickForTaz, and I do blogs and challenges and just things like that.
Hi, my name is Lisa Clark, and yeah, I kind of do pretty much similar, but add a little bit of beauty, a little bit of fashion. Yeah, pretty much that's all I do.
That sounds very self-deprecating.
Hi, I'm Hazel Hayes. I don't do as much YouTube as I used to because I've been busy writing a book, which you can see already now. It's called Out to Blog on McDaniel.com. But yeah, I've mostly done kind of vlogs and longer form vlogs and short films and sketches, comedy, horror, that kind of stuff. I'm sort of heading towards either filmmaking or authoring. We're not entirely sure yet.
We'll figure it out. Cool. So I just want to ask, to start the panel by asking, you know, I think it's really great to represent underrepresented groups at like events like SITSI, but when you look at YouTube, it doesn't feel like female creators are specifically like underrepresented. So what do you think is like the benefit of having a women online panel at SITSI?
I have quite a strong opinion on this. I'm just gonna jump
Fantastic.
I hate it. I only come to these panels because like they still exist and I am a woman online and I do want to support women online, but I've been to so many conventions now where women are sort of segregated into a different category and it's sort of becoming, it's starting to feel more like a segregation and less like support, where it's like maybe just have women represented across all of the panels and have, you know, race and sexuality and everything is represented equally to the point that we don't need to keep having these separate, because it's kind of it's reminiscent, it's a reflection of any other industry, like even, you know, in the film industry, there's so much being done with Me Too and Time's Up to promote women and get to that stage of equality, and it needs to be done, and that's great. But I can't wait for the day when it doesn't need to be done anymore. Like, we don't have a men's panel, you know, so like why do we have a women's panel? We're kind of, we should be equally represented, and we should feel like we've got to that place. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to not having to do these panels in the nicest possible way. I'm having you here, but it would be great if we did it. I feel like we've answered that in one. I don't know if anyone disagrees, please.
We actually had that conversation about, what, 5-10 minutes ago? But I said they literally
So yeah, I guess one of the very like commonly talked about questions when it comes to like women on YouTube is that there's sometimes like a bit of a stereotype that you can be put in, like you're expected to make a certain kind of content. So do you feel like that stereotype has been applied to you and you've always just had to like be sort of correcting that, or how have you felt with that stereotype being applied?
I think it kind of depends on what type of videos that you do. So personally for me, in the comedy genre, it is quite difficult because it's such a male-dominated industry. Like, most of the stand-ups are male, in the films most of the comedians are male. And I feel like on YouTube, a lot of the big comedians are male as well. And we had a women in comedy panel yesterday where we were saying it is quite tough, and it turned quite negative. And I was like, no, it's not a positive thing, make comedy sketches. But I think I completely agree with what you're saying about like, they don't have a men online panel. It's still nice to do this, and it's like, yay, power to women. I think some genres are much better at being inclusive for everyone, regardless of what gender, but then there are certain ones where it's a little bit difficult. I've completely forgotten the question now.
No, I mean,
I do this, I talk and then I'm like, wait, what am I saying?
you're along the right lines, yeah. Like, I think especially what you're saying, like comedians can find it even more difficult to step out of that expectation. Do the other comedians on the panel find it? Yes, Taz?
Can I just say from like my perspective? So I've grown up watching YouTube, and so I'm very aware that these are discussions that we have, and I completely agree with Hazel because I watched you a lot, and I know you're very passionate about this. But like for me, I pretty much make videos in Cardiff. I'm in Wales in my little bubble, and so I don't see the YouTube world, like this world, a lot. I just stay in my room and make videos. For me, I'm just me on camera, and I never think of like. If you watch my videos,
I like have greasy hair, no makeup, in a hoodie, and that's just what people expect. Like the standard's really low, so I guess that helps. But like, so then when they see me, they're just watching me, and for me, YouTube actually made me feel more myself. Like I have nothing but great things to say about you. That's why when I'm here this weekend, I'm like a kid in a candy store, and I'm like, oh my god, I love you all so much, because I've had so much like positive comments, and never has it been about my race, never has it been about being a gender. It's just, people just are really nice. And like, everything's been super supportive. The only reason I'm able to solo travel now and do all the videos I can do now is because my audience has always been so supportive of that. And I've never felt like, I've never had comments like, oh, you're good for a woman, or you're good for a brown girl. It's just been like, oh, we like you, Taz. I'm like, oh, I like you too. And it's just been so, like, I never see this side. But then, I guess it's because I'm just maybe in my own naive little bubble. But if you look at the comments, like, I've been very lucky. And like, it's been super, super nice. And I'm scared I'm going to jinx it now. But like, it's always been super, super nice.
I'm going to start even really horrible comments. You're good for a brown girl. She's good for
I think like, you shouldn't be, I think what Hazel was also commenting on, like, it shouldn't be, like, I want to be, if someone's watching me, I'm going to forget how to say it, but like, it shouldn't be like, something that you can't control, like being a woman, that shouldn't be a factor in it. It should be, we just like you. We like you. And it's like, thank you, you like me. No, I like you for a woman, or I like you for, you know, like no one says to Liza, you're great for a brown girl. We just love Liza. She's just amazing. I'm like, I'll mention BTS once, but like BTS, they're like so good, and they can't even speak English, but they're like #1 band, and I'm really passionate about this. But what I'm trying to say is like, no one cares about that. Just they'll like you if you're you, and if we don't make it a thing, it won't be a thing. No one says to BTS, oh, you can't speak English. I'm like, because we just like BTS because they're amazing. Anyway, that's fun.
This is the BTS panel now. No, but I think you made a really interesting point, which is like sometimes we set those expectations on ourselves. So do you sometimes feel like when you started your YouTube channel, you were like, okay, I'm gonna like get ready, I'm gonna do makeup, and you know, you present yourself in that way, and then suddenly you're like, oh wait.
I want to look cute.
Don't you love when you see celebrities looking gross?
Yeah, that's my favourite thing. Margot Robbie put up, I always talk about this on panels, but Margot Robbie got pamped. She was out on a surfboard one time, and they just got her from some bad angles. And this is Margot Robbie, right? She's gorgeous, and I've met her twice, and she is as gorgeous in the flesh. But they got her from some really, really horrendous angles, and she looks like bad, like just demonstrably bad. But she put pictures of herself. So she got the paparazzi pictures, she put them on her own Instagram and was like, thanks for getting those angles, guys. And like, it is kind of nice to see, you know, people, not just women, men too, like, but seeing celebs in their normal, you know, state and habitat, I suppose, when they're not all prepped and preened and they haven't spent 6 months getting ready for a role. And it's like, oh yeah, they're just people, they're just normal. So I think our followers appreciate that as well, when they just see you kind of slobbing about or whatever, and they're like, oh, it's not all that glamorous, and it's not all red carpets and conventions, and like...
Yeah, people need to see me on a day-to-day when I'm not filming. I look like a troll, genuinely. Maybe I should stop filming without makeup on and see what happens.
Because Bethan, I know that at one point you made like a conscious decision to like wear less makeup in your videos and stuff, and like how was that? Like how did that go with your audience? And like do you feel like you got any more criticism or anything?
Yeah, I mean that was it was a weird time. I mean that was generally the reason why I stopped wearing so much makeup is I went through basically just a phase where I was just like crippling insecure person, and I just thought was like, this is the only way I can look good with a shit ton of makeup. And yeah, I think, but yeah, at the same time, I knew the reaction would be good because equally when I was wearing a shit ton of makeup, everyone was like, you're wearing a shit ton of makeup. And so all the comments after I take it off was like, fantastic, you know, like, you look better now. It's just like, I don't know, so I don't really know how I felt about that whole thing. I mean, I feel better that I was more comfortable with myself to wear less makeup, but yeah, equally like, yeah, I got tons of comments from other women as well, just being like, yeah, you are clearly hiding something. And it's like, thanks for letting everybody know. Yeah, so, sorry, what was the actual question? Was that?
No,
yeah, okay, cool.
It's not easy to talk a little bit.
I don't know. Everything's cool now. I wear wigs, so we go through phases.
The other thing is, like, it's important to not judge whatever someone says. If you want to wear shit ton of makeup, great. Like, you know, it's also whatever you need, because being in front of the camera is so awful. It's like, I don't know how you guys feel, but the more I do it, the more I hate it. I get anxiety attacks.
Oh, and a bit of nature.
Oh, lovely. There we go, right. So what should we make? Should we make a plan or should we just go with it?
I feel like if we just go for it,
Right.
this will not go
Happy
well.
day.
No, this won't go well.
Oh, this one, listen, we're just going to have to. We're just going to make it happen. Right. We also have a box of tools. We start with a pan.
The cooking element.
No, we just introduce. We'll need that. Potato masher. There you go. Happy day.
For the
right.
dishes, yeah.
I would like some butter.
How much?
200. Yes. 200. Estimate about what?
What? This is 250 grams.
I don't want 250. I want 200 grams.
Right. What do we do now then?
Put it in there.
Do you have a utensil?
Let's find out, shall we?
I need a knife. Or do you use our hands?
This isn't a pantomime.
Oh, look at that! This is fish. No!
Thank you for.
Can you stop running around with that?
There you go.
Am I to go on guess? Yeah,
about 20%. Thank you.
Oh, 20% off.
20%. Do you maths?
1, 2, 3. Right, I'm cutting that off.
Okay.
At what point are you confident you can do this and answer questions? I can.
Yeah, let's go on.
Who's got a question?
That's not
What am I doing with this now then?
Well, no, because this goes in here like this.
Then where do I put this one? Oh, in there.
Have we got a bit of it? Oh, that's
You're nearest. Hello.
Oh, look, it's here. We're making a flat cake.
Dan, pay attention.
Sorry. Yeah.
What is your favourite kind of cake and what is your least favourite?
Good question. My favourite kind of cake is a Victoria sponge. I'd like 200 grams of flour.
Right.
That's sugar, isn't it?
And she's favourite?
Favourite Victoria sponge. It's boring, it's classic, but it works, you know, and everyone's proud of it. When you put it in front of them, they do this. And then you have a cup of tea with it, and it's lovely. Strawberry jam, not raspberry jam. Fresh strawberries and candy, I don't like. My least favourite one. I don't like fruit cake. I'm not old enough yet to like fruit cake. You know what I mean? It's just a lot bitty. Bitty.
How much flour do you want?
200.
How do I figure that out now? Well, how much? A handful?
Should we melt it? I think we should try.
I don't know what we're making!
Neither do I! This never stops Simon River. Right. Do anything know who Simon River is?
Yes, that's why the joke
Simon River, big